Ozzie, good seeing you, my friend.
Juan, good seeing you.
Let me ask you, Ozzie, we've been talking a lot about the death of Bin Laden. What do you think this means to the al-Qaeda movement?
Well, obviously the death of Bin Laden is profoundly significant, but it really doesn't change that much in the on-ground realities of what's going on in our larger war against al-Qaeda. Certainly, we couldn't bring about the end of al-Qaeda without killing or capturing Bin Laden, but at the same time, this does not mean the organization is dead. In fact, they're alive, they're vibrant, and in many ways much more diffused than they were when Bin Laden created this organization almost 20 years ago.
And in fact, we put out a report called The Threat Transformed that talks a lot about that. This was before the revolutions in the Arab world, talking about that metastasized movement.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is going to be, we're going to have to determine what Bin Laden's legacy actually is. It was always his vision that, it wasn't about an organization, that it was about a movement and an ideology, that there would be 1,000 Bin Ladens out there. The question is that what's happened? Has he done enough work over the last 2 decades that he's created this diffused organization that's going to withstand his death? Or was the organization so centered on his cult-like status that the organization will decline with his demise? Which is interesting, Juan, when we talk about this, what we have to do going forward is, while Bin Laden obviously is dead, there's still a significant terrorism threat emanating from Western Pakistan. There's also multiple questions regarding how much Pakistan may or may not have known about Bin Laden. And we got a question from one of our readers on Facebook about this topic. Can you touch on the Pakistan-U.S. relations and what this means?
I mean, this is the most complicated period of U.S.-Pakistan relations that I could imagine. There was already, before this event, a deep level of distrust between Pakistan and the U.S., between the intelligence services, between the military. Some of that coming out of the Raymond Davis affair, the CIA operative in country who was part of this series of killings, and the Pakistanis held him in custody, created enormous tension that had led to a real rupture. And so you have this event now with the killing of Bin Laden, and as President Obama said, an event that happened deep in Pakistan. He used that language, I think, intentionally, to describe the fact that this was very near to the heart of Pakistan, 35 miles outside of the capital, in a luxurious villa in a populated city, Abbottabad. The military city, the garrison city, the equivalent of their West Point in that city. And so, that raises an enormous number of questions as to whether or not the Pakistanis knew about Bin Laden's location there, whether or not they were actually complicit in supporting him or hiding him, whether or not they were just willfully blind, or whether or not they were just bad in terms of their intelligence gathering. Any of those answers for the Pakistanis is not good. And certainly in the context of the relationship with the U.S. and Pakistan, it doesn't do anything to build the trust. And so I think we're really at a critical juncture in terms of the relationship, because it could either descend into further distrust and discord and a rupture of relations, or it could be a turning point where the United States uses this as a point of leverage to say to the Pakistanis, you really do need to do more. This is a moment where the Pakistanis are cowed and chagrined because of the discovery of Bin Laden so close to the capital. And so I think this is a real interesting moment. I think, Ozzie, what you're going to see probably is, on the surface, the administration already doing this, giving Pakistan some face-saving room to be able to talk about cooperation, but behind the scenes, some real tough talk to say, now is the time to break the back of al-Qaeda. We need more information. We need more cooperation on getting al-Qaeda as well as Taliban leadership.
Do you think there will be some, pushback from the Pakistani population, and that United States, now you've got Bin Laden, what else do you want from us? Do you think that's going to be a challenge?
I think that's absolutely right. There's a current in the Pakistani populace that the war on terror is really an American fabrication, if you will, lots of conspiracy theories. This operation will add as well to the angst and anger among some in the Pakistani populace of invasion of Pakistani sovereignty by the Americans, and it's clearly a military operation in the heart of Pakistan demonstrates that, at least for those. And so I think there is still going to be a lot of angst and anger among the populace. And I think what you've seen over the past few months, which is troubling analysts like you and me and others, is the fact that the Pakistani populace seems to be growing more and more extreme, or at least the moderate voices are more and more silenced over time. And so the Pakistani establishment, the political class, really has to gauge that in terms of how they engage with the United States openly and behind the scenes. Let me ask you this, because there's all sorts of ramifications to the death of bin Laden, to al-Qaeda, to the Pakistan-U.S. relation. Also a question as to where U.S. policy goes. Where does our counterterrorism policy go? Where does our Afghan policy go with President Obama thinking about withdrawal of troops this summer? So where does this leave some of those policies?
You know, that's a great question, Juan. You know, we talk about what Pakistan's going to do. We talk about what this means for al-Qaeda. I think the great unknown, though, is what does this mean for the United States counterterrorism policies going forward? You know, particularly in these budget environments where people are looking to reduce how much money we're spending as a government, but we also have been in Iraq and Afghanistan for, you know, almost a decade now, and people are looking to bring those troops home. We're going to have to be careful as a nation to remind ourselves that while bin Laden is dead, al-Qaeda as an organization is still very healthy, very active, and still intent on killing Americans and attacking the West. It's going to be important that we don't use the death of bin Laden to justification to end our counterterrorism activities, because we must finish the job. We must dismantle al-Qaeda. And we also have to ensure that there's not a backlash from Congress where we start getting funding cut to Pakistan, to our support to Pakistan, or funding cut to our troops in the field, because again, al-Qaeda is not done. Speaking of the political challenges here, Juan, one of the things another one of our readers on the Facebook question they posed was the issue of the timing of the announcement and the politics behind this historic announcement and the death of bin Laden. Can you, having served in the White House and being privy to a lot of those conversations during your time, can you try to capture some of the deliberations that you may or may not want to read?
Yeah, I think this was everyone understands this is a major event, not just strategically against al-Qaeda, not just internationally with Pakistan in terms of our national security policy, but also politically. And so no doubt the White House had in mind how they were going to couch this announcement. I think in this instance, though, Ozzie, they didn't want to go out too quickly. They wanted to be able to confirm the identity of bin Laden, the body, and they wanted to make sure to have their ducks in a row. But I think the information started to leak out quicker than they would have liked, and so they were forced to react, which is why the president scheduled the Sunday night press conference. I think now they're dealing with some of the after effects. They're trying to answer lots of questions about the operation. They're also now having to deal with the pressure of needing to release some proof that it was bin Laden, since the body's now been buried at sea. And so the question as to whether or not they release a photograph or some video or some other evidence is now centerpiece of discussions at the White House. And I think we'll just see probably in the coming hours what they decide to do, but that will be a sensitive decision.
Well, Juan, it's always a pleasure to be with you.
Likewise, Ozzie.